Welcome, race fans, to Pump the Brakes, the one, the only, the Cadillac of Formula One podcasts. I am your host, the Pit Lane Patriot, and this week, Formula One heads to the Red Bull Ring, and we've got everything you need to know before watching the Austrian Grand Prix. So let's get right into it. The Austrian Grand Prix in Spielberg, Austria, at the Red Bull Ring. What do you need to know about it? Well, Austria is where Red Bull is founded. That's why it's called the Red Bull Ring. Also, the Red Bull Ring is short. It's only 4.326 kilometers long. The race itself is 71 laps. There are not a million corners here. This is not Singapore. It's not Monaco. It's not one of those tracks where you need like a compass, a map, and 3 YouTube explainers just to understand where the car is. Austria is much more straightforward than that, but that's also what makes it cool. This is a track where the lap is short, the margins are tiny, and because the cars come around so quickly, the whole weekend can feel intense. You get a mistake in qualifying and it hurts. You get traffic at the wrong time, it hurts. You miss one braking point and suddenly your whole lap is gone. And historically, this place has had a few different lives. The original version was called the Austrian Ring, which opened in the late 1960s and was known as this fast, old-school, dangerous, sweeping circuit in the Austrian hills. Then it got rebuilt into the A1 Ring in the 1990s and eventually became what we know it today as the Red Bull Ring. So when you hear Red Bull Ring, yes, it's Red Bull's home race now. It's modern, it's branded, it's clean, but underneath that, there's still this old school Austrian racing DNA. It's built into hills so you can see the elevation. You can feel the track going up and down. It's not just a flat parking lot circuit. And that elevation is one of the first things that I tell people to watch out for this weekend. Turn 1 comes up fast, and then the cars climb uphill toward turn 3, which is one of the biggest braking zones on the entire lap, and that's a prime overtaking spot. You'll see a lot of drivers drive to the inside over there, and sometimes from like half a mile back. Then they go towards turn 4, another heavy braking zone. So you got really aggressive turns here. And that's another place where you can see a lot of moves, lockups, and sometimes some chaos. So you're going straight through fast in turn 1, through turn 2, and then turn 3 and turn 4 are chaos zones. So first half of the lap is a very power and braking zone. It's straights, it's DRS, uphill braking, and drivers trying to force each other into mistakes. Then the second half of the track becomes a little more flowing. The car starts working downhill through the faster corners, and this is where more balance matters. This is where you can see which cars are stable, which cars are sliding, which cars are eating their tires, and which drivers are comfortable carrying speed. And that's what makes Austria fun. It's not complicated, but it exposes things very quickly.
Most of the corners are high speed, it's very like a Silverstone, Spa, Suzuka. This is old school, I like it.
A car that is fast in a straight line can look good here. A car that brakes well can attack here. A car that is unstable over curbs or struggles with traction or has tire issues can get exposed here. And because the lap is short, qualifying can be extremely tight. You can have a bunch of cars covered by just a few tenths. So when you're watching this weekend, here's the big things I'd keep an eye on. First, track limits. Austria and track limits have a long and messy relationship because the lap is short. Drivers are constantly trying to steal every inch off the road, especially in the fast final sector. And when everyone is pushing that hard, you can get deleted laps in qualifying, you can get warnings in the race, and you can get penalties after the race, which we as Cadillac fans learned about the hard way. All that fun Formula One paperwork that makes everybody angry definitely exists in Austria. Number 2, braking. Turns 3 and 4 are going to tell us a lot. If a driver is confident on the brakes, this is a place to attack. If the car is nervous under braking, this is a place where you can get punished. 3, this used to be big on DRS trains. So let's watch out to see how the new regulations match with what used to be large DRS zones. If you don't know what DRS zones are, basically boost zones. So it's going to be very interesting to see for the first time how these boost zones look. And number 5, for us, obviously, this is another benchmark weekend for our team Cadillac. Where does Cadillac land on a track like this? Can they look a little sharper operationally? Can they keep building? Can they get closer to that midfield fight? But before we talk about the stories around the track, let's get the story straight. Here's the schedule. Friday morning, we start with F2 practice. It is indeed an F2 weekend. We have F2 practice at 5 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time, F1 free practice at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Time, F2 qualifying 9:55 a.m., F1 free practice 11 a.m. So we're talking about all sessions prior to noon if you live on the East Coast. Saturday, F1 free practice 3 is at 6:30 a.m., then the F2 sprint race at 8:15 a.m., and then F1 qualifying at 10 a.m. Sunday is feature race at 4:10 a.m. for F2. Yes, that is a Sunday 4:10 a.m. feature race if you like F2. So I'll be watching Colton at 4 a.m. And then the Austrian Grand Prix itself is at 9 a.m. Eastern, which it has been the last 3 races. And because a lot of these races are in a similar time zone, you can expect 9 a.m., 10 a.m., maybe 11 a.m. races for a while. So that's Austria. Short lap, big elevation, heavy braking, track limits, tight qualifying, DRS games, and a real chance to learn something about who has power, who has balance, who has confidence, and who's just hanging on. Okay, that being said, let's get into the stories around the grid before the Austrian Grand Prix.
The action in Austria is 5 lights away.
All right, so major stories of the Austrian Grand Prix. Biggest one to me, simple. Lewis Hamilton has made this season real. Because up until Barcelona, this 2026 season was starting to feel like Mercedes' world. Mercedes had won the first 6 Grand Prix of the season. Kimi Antonelli was on this ridiculous run. George Russell had won Australia. Mercedes had been on pole every single weekend. And the question was starting to become, okay, is everybody else just fighting for scraps here? And then Barcelona happened. Lewis Hamilton gets his first win for Ferrari. Ferrari nails the strategy. Hamilton has the pace. Mercedes doesn't win. Antonelli retires. It's beautiful. And suddenly, the championship feels different. That does not mean Ferrari is now the favorite. Let's not overreact. One race does not erase the first 6 races of the season. What it does mean is that Ferrari is no longer just showing flashes. They are now a team that has legitimately won a Grand Prix this year, not a sprint, with Lewis Hamilton in red in a year where everybody is still trying to understand new cars. And that matters because Hamilton's last 3 races have changed the conversation. He had second places, then the win in Spain. And now the gap to Antonelli is 41 points. Now that's still real. Nobody should pretend 41 points is nothing, but it's not season over. It's not Kimi's already run away with it. It's a proper championship gap now, not a funeral march. And for Ferrari, that's emotionally huge too. This is Lewis Hamilton winning for Ferrari. That sentence alone is kind of crazy. Even if you expected him to eventually get one, actually seeing it happen is different. It takes the pressure off. It gives the garage proof. It gives the Tifosi proof. Tifosi meaning the Ferrari fans. Ferrari fans are very faithful fans, and they're known as Tifosi. So it gives the Tifosi proof. It gives Hamilton proof that this move was not just a legacy tour. And now Ferrari comes into Austria with a chance to prove Barcelona was not a one-off. And that's the key. Can they do it again? Any team can win a random race during the season. Can they do it multiple times? Maybe not a win, but can they be there? Can they qualify well? Can they, stay with Mercedes on race pace? Can they keep McLaren behind them? Can Charles Leclerc get back into the fight too, and not just Hamilton? Because Charles is that other Ferrari piece here. Lewis is hot right now, but Ferrari cannot become a one-car title story if they want to put real pressure on Mercedes. Charles Leclerc needs a clean weekend. He needs points, he needs momentum, and honestly, he probably needs a weekend who are talking about him again for the right reasons. But right now, the Ferrari story is definitely Lewis Hamilton. That's just the truth. And that's not an insult on Charles. It's just the reality of the moment. Hamilton has taken the spotlight because he earned it. He delivered the breakthrough win. He changed the championship math. He made everybody go, wait a minute, are Ferrari actually coming? So Austria becomes test number 1 after the breakthrough. It's one thing to win in Barcelona. It's another thing to show up the next race and still look dangerous. That's what I'm watching from Ferrari. Are they really back in the title fight, or was that really just a one-off and a perfect weekend with perfect timing? Now on the other side, we have Mercedes. And Mercedes are in such a funny position because if you look at the season overall, they're still the team to beat. They are the points leader. They have the strongest qualifying. They won 6 of the 7 races so far. They're leading the Constructors' Championship. That's not a team in trouble. But the vibe changed in Barcelona. And that's kind of how Formula One works. You can dominate for a month and then have one messy weekend, and suddenly the whole paddock starts asking questions and things shift. Biggest question for Mercedes right now is not pace. The pace is there. We know the pace is there. Question is reliability. Kimi Antonelli looked like he was on for another strong start in Spain, and then the car failed. That ended his winning streak, and it's not just some quiet little bad result either. It happened on a weekend where Hamilton won. That makes the point swing huge. Because had Russell won, then the points stay within Mercedes as opposed to an extra 7 going to Ferrari. So Hamilton wins, Antonelli scores nothing, Russell finishes second, Mercedes still gets a podium for sure, but the championship lead gets tighter and the emotional story of the season sort of shifts away from Mercedes machine towards Ferrari threat. It's not the first time this has happened either. Ferrari have the tendency to start catching up when the season gets a little bit deeper in. So if I'm Mercedes, Austria is about calming everything down. Get through practice clean, qualify strong, don't trip over your own drivers, don't have reliability drama, don't give Ferrari another opening. And then there's the driver dynamic. Kimi Antonelli still leading the championship. But let's be very clear, what this kid is doing is insane. He is 19 years old, in a Mercedes, in a new regulation era, and he's leading the championship. This is not normal. It's not something we should get used to. It's a huge deal. But now we get to see the next layer of this. Like, how does he respond after a bad race? It's easy to be the wonderkin when everything's rolling. Win, 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 win. Everybody loves you. Everybody's saying you're the future. Every race feels like destiny. But then the car stops, the streak ends, Hamilton wins, gap shrinks, and now what? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not doubting Kimi. This is me saying that this is the next test. Every great driver has to go through the first punch. The first weekend is where the story turns against you. First time people start saying, okay, maybe this is getting interesting. First time you don't leave the weekend feeling invincible. Austria is his response weekend. And then there's my guy, George Russell, who is sitting there like, hey, remember me? Because George is third in the championship. He won the opening race in Australia. He's only 9 points behind Hamilton, and he has won at Austria before. So this is not some side character. George Russell is very much a part of this, and I stand by my statements as I've been saying all season. I stand by George Russell to win the championship this year. But this is a bit of a danger zone for George from a narrative standpoint, because right now this season has two giant magnets pulling attention away from him: Kimi and Lewis, the future star, the GOAT. It's a tough place to live if you're George Russell, but it also takes some heat off you. He can be excellent, but still get overshadowed. He can be consistent and still not be the headline. But if he wants this to be his championship too, Austria is exactly the kind of weekend where he has to remind everybody. Now with a P4, now with solid points, he needs to be in the front of the fight. This weekend, George Russell needs to make a statement and win the Austrian Grand Prix. And with Mercedes, there's also the question of how they manage the two drivers if they're close to each other on track. We've already seen enough this season to know that both of them are quick. Both of them believe that they should be leading the team. Kimi's got the points lead, George has the experience. And when Ferrari is coming, you cannot afford to have one of your cars wasting time because it's fighting the other one in the wrong way. It's a real championship management issue. You want your drivers racing, but you don't want them serving the race to Hamilton on a silver platter. You don't want them to lose 3 seconds because one Mercedes is stuck behind the other while Ferrari gets clean air. You don't want to turn a possible win into second and third because nobody wanted to yield. So for Mercedes, Austria is about 3 things: reliability, execution, and managing those drivers. If they hit all 3, they're probably still the team to beat 1-2. If they don't, Ferrari's close enough now to make them pay. So next, let's talk about our defending champions, McLaren. McLaren's pretty interesting. They're not the main title story right now, but they're very much in the front pack conversation. Lando Norris is the defending world champion. Oscar Piastri is obviously no joke. And Austria has been a very good place for McLaren in the recent years. Lando got his first F1 podium at the Red Bull Ring back in 2020. McLaren had strong Austria weekends after that. Norris won his race from pole that year. Piastri had the race lap record on the current layout last year. So this is not a random track for them. This is a place where McLaren can actually come in believing we can do something here. And they need that because McLaren has not won yet in 2026. And for defending champions, that's a little uncomfortable. They've had a couple of moments, they've had pace, they've been in the conversation, but they haven't put the full Grand Prix together yet. Austria feels like one of those weekends where they might be able to change that. The short lap helps create tight gaps. The elevation matters, the efficiency matters, straight line performance matters, energy deployment matters, and under the 2026 rules with active aero and overtake mode, Austria could become a really interesting test of who actually understands the new racecraft and regulations best. This is not the old open the flap and go world of DRS anymore. Now it's about when you have the electrical energy to use, when you can attack, when you can defend, when you're forced to recharge, and how cleanly your car moves between straight line speed and cornering. Now see, that could play into McLaren's hands if their car is efficient and if their Friday experiments work. And that's another piece. McLaren is reportedly bringing an experimental rear wing for Friday practice. That does not guarantee anything. Friday tests can look exciting and then disappear by qualifying. But it tells you McLaren is still pushing. They know Silverstone is next, that which is their home race. They don't want to go into Silverstone still waiting for win number 1 of the season. Imagine the difference in vibe if Lando or Oscar wins in Austria and then they roll into Britain with momentum. That changes the whole energy around the team. So for McLaren, this weekend is about opportunity. They don't have to be the favorites. They just have to be close enough to Mercedes and Ferrari to make them uncomfortable. If Mercedes has reliability concerns, if Ferrari is still proving whether Barcelona was repeatable, and if Red Bull is not dominant, McLaren absolutely has a window here. And Red Bull, speaking of them, this is their home race. Now, Red Bull is in a weird spot because when you say Red Bull Ring, casual fans might assume Red Bull is automatically the story. It's their track, it's their branding, their home race. It's Max Verstappen in Austria. You expect orange grandstands, smoke, chaos, and Max being Max. But in the 2026 championship picture, Red Bull is not the main force right now. Mercedes is leading, Ferrari has momentum, McLaren is trying to re-enter the fight. Red Bull is more of a threat than a team controlling the season, but that does not mean you ignore Max Verstappen at Spielberg, absolutely not. Max has won the Austrian Grand Prix 4 times. It's one of those places where even if Red Bull is not the best car overall, you do not casually dismiss them. Max at Austria is like one of those recurring villains in a movie franchise. Kind of like Zach Brown was saying. You can think that story's moved on and the music hits and he's right there again. Might as well just call him Chucky, right? And Austria can produce that kind of weekend. Short lap, tight qualifying, heavy braking zones, and a crowd that is going to be fully behind him. If Red Bull can get that car into the window, Max can become a problem very quickly. The question is whether Red Bull has enough total package to fight over a full race. 1 lap, maybe. A good start, yeah. Strategy, very possible. Can they beat Mercedes, Ferrari, and McLaren on merit over 71 laps? That's the harder question. And that's what makes them interesting this weekend. They might not be the obvious favorites, but they are the team that you keep in the corner of your eye. Because if the big three start taking points off each other, qualifying gets messy, the race turns into a strategy fight, Max is the kind of driver who can steal the whole thing. Remember, we're still talking about the best driver on the grid here. And for Red Bull as a team, Austria matters symbolically too. Home race. You do not want to be invisible at your home race. You do not want the weekend to become the Hamilton, Kimi, McLaren show. There's pride here. There's pressure too. There's a brand element as well. And there's also the reality that Red Bull needs to show development progress in this new era because it's not a top team right now. This is not just about one weekend. It's about proving that there's still one upgrade, one clean weekend, one Max Verstappen masterclass away from being part of the front again. Next, I want to talk about one more story that I think is worth mentioning, and that's Haas and the driver market. Because Formula One never lets you just watch the races. There's always got to be a political layer. There's always got to be a future seat layer. There's always got to be some underneath reason for everything that happens on the track. And right now, Haas is interesting because Leonardo Fornaroli, the 2025 Formula 2 champion and McLaren reserve driver, recently had a test with Haas. That matters because Haas could be looking at future options. Now, this is not me saying a race seat is guaranteed. Testing a driver does not mean announcement coming tomorrow. Teams test drivers for a lot of reasons. Evaluation, data, relationships, future planning, simulated correlation, political positioning, all of it. But it is still something to watch because Haas has Ollie Behrman. They have Esteban Ocon. They have links to Ferrari. And the 2027 driver market could get very interesting depending on who performs, who underperforms, and which young drivers keep pushing their way toward F1. And that matters to us as American F1 fans too, even outside of Cadillac, because Haas is still an American licensed team. Their driver choices, their development choices, and their identity choices always carry a little extra interest for this audience. So if they're testing Fornaroli, if they're looking at reserve options, if they're thinking about 2027, then that's definitely worth noting. Not panic, not certainty, just watch the space. And finally, there's the broader sporting side of the championship. This season is starting to get properly layered. Top, you have Antonelli trying to prove the Wonder Kid story is real for a full season. You have Hamilton trying to turn a Ferrari breakthrough into a Ferrari title charge. You have my man Russell trying to make sure he does not get squeezed out of his own team's championship story. And you have McLaren trying to remind everybody that they are defending champions for a reason. And then you have Verstappen and Red Bull trying to turn Austria into a home race statement. And behind all of that, you have the 2026 regulations still creating uncertainty. Teams are still learning these cars. Drivers are still learning how to race with active aero, overtake mode, boost, recharge, and the new energy demands. Strategies are still evolving. Qualifying gaps are tight. Reliability, not guaranteed. And that's why Austria is such a good weekend for this point of the season. It's round 8. We're far enough into the championship to make it real, but early enough that nobody can say everything is settled. Mercedes has the advantage, but Ferrari just landed a punch. McLaren is waiting for its first win. Red Bull's coming home. One messy weekend can shift the whole feeling again. So outside of Cadillac, that's the good picture for me. Ferrari wants to prove Barcelona was not a one-off. Mercedes wants to prove Barcelona was not the beginning of a problem. Antonelli wants to respond. Russell wants to stay central. McLaren wants to win number 1. Max wants to remind everybody what Austria has looked like before. And Haas might be quietly giving up early signs of how the next driver market cycle could start moving. That's a lot for one weekend. And now with the rest of the grid covered, let's talk about what all this means for our team Cadillac. All right, so Cadillac. For Cadillac, Austria is a very interesting test. Not because we're coming in saying, oh, Cadillac should score points this weekend. I'm not doing that. I'm not setting fake expectations just so that we can be disappointed on Sunday. It's not the point of year one. Point of year one is progress. Point of year one is development. Point of year one is to build an actual Formula One team in real time in front of everybody while the rest of the grid already has years and years of structure, data, facilities, rhythm, and experience. So when we talk about Cadillac this weekend, the question is not, are they magically in the points now? The question is, does the car move forward? That's the question every week. And this weekend, that question becomes a little more serious because Cadillac is bringing what they've called a substantial upgrade package to Austria. New side pods, new floor, revised bodywork. This is not just a little trim piece and a prayer. This is real development. And that matters because we have been saying this from the beginning that the Mac 26 is a baby. It's a brand new Formula One car from a brand new Formula One team. It's never going to roll out in Australia and immediately punch Alpine in the mouth. That was not realistic. But what you need to see from this team is a learning curve. Are they understanding the car? Are the upgrades working? Are the drivers giving useful feedback? Is the factory responding? Are they cleaning up operational mistakes? Are they getting closer to the teams that are ahead? That is the season. And Austria gives us a pretty clean place to judge some of that because the Red Bull ring is short. The lap times are tight. Cadillac finds a couple tenths. We may actually get to see it in the gaps. If the upgrade package gives them better balance, better stability, better load, better confidence for Checo and Bottas, it might show up pretty quickly. Now, I'm not saying the upgrade automatically works. This is Formula One. New parts can help. New parts can also confuse the team. New parts can need 3 sessions of data before anybody can understand them. And Austria is not exactly a gentle test either. You've got elevation, you've got heavy braking, aggressive curbs, and likely high track temperatures. So if you bring a floor and a side pod update, the car is going to get examined. But that's good. And that's what we want. We want the team to learn. We want them to put parts on the car and find out what's real. For Checo Perez, this is another chance to be the reference point. Checo has already shown flashes. Monaco was a big one. He had that P10 before the penalty knocked him down. And even though the final result hurt, the performance itself mattered. It showed that Cadillac is not just driving around in the background hoping nobody notices. There are weekends where if things line up, they can at least sniff the edge of the top 10. And that's where Checo is so valuable. He knows what a competitive car feels like. He knows what a bad car feels like. He knows how to manage a race. He knows how to survive ugly weekends. And for a new team, that is gold. Because when he says that the car is improving, that means something. When he says the factory's pushing, that means something. When he says the development rate is good, that means something. Now for Bottas, this weekend is important in a bit of a different way. Valtteri has had a rougher stretch recently. Brake issues, overheating trouble, reliability headaches. That's the kind of stuff that can make a new team season feel very long. And it's frustrating because Bottas is not some rookie who needs to learn how to conduct himself. He's a Grand Prix winner. He's a proven professional. He knows Austria well. He's won here before. He got his first front row start, his first podium. This is a track with real history for him. So for Bottas, I'm not even asking for a miracle result. I'm asking for a clean weekend. Give him a car he can run, give him practice laps, give him qualifying without a problem, give him a race where he can actually elevate the package and bring it home. Because Cadillac needs both cars contributing data. That's very important. It's another big part of year one. It's not about Checo trying to drag the car higher than it belongs. It's about 2 experienced drivers helping the team understand what they built, what they changed, and what needs to come next. That's why I keep coming back to execution. The upgrade's exciting, the development's exciting, but the real test is whether the whole team can put the weekend together. Can they run both cars cleanly in practice? Can they understand the upgrade by qualifying? Can they avoid self-inflicted mistakes? Can they manage temperature? Can they manage brakes? Can they keep the race operations sharp? Because the midfield is not going to wait for them. Even the back of the grid is not going to wait for them. Formula One is not going to give you pity points because you're new and American and have a cool logo. You have to earn every inch. And that's what I want to see this week. Earn an inch. Maybe that means closer to the cars ahead of you in qualifying. Maybe it means 1 car ahead of Aston Martin again. Maybe it means beating somebody on merit. Maybe that means both cars finishing the race with useful data. Maybe it means the upgrade clearly gives the drivers more confidence. Those are wins. Those are all winning conditions. It's not champagne, it's not points or bust, but it's progress, and that's what we chase. Cadillacs keep stacking progress, eventually real results will come. Now, being that this is also a Formula 2 weekend, let's do a little quick check-in on our boy Colton Herta.
Colton Herta has taken the lead.
So Colton is back in Formula 2 this weekend at Spielberg, and I think this is another useful checkpoint in this season. I'm not going to turn every F2 weekend into a referendum on whether or not he deserves an F1 seat, because that gets exhausting and honestly it misses the point. The point of the year is development. Yeah, results matter. For Colton, they do. Of course they matter. He's not doing this for vibes. But Cadillac sent him to Formula 2 because he needs time in the European racing environment. Time with Pirelli tires, time on the F1 calendar, time around the paddock, time learning this world from the inside. That's the assignment. So for Colton this weekend, I want to see the same thing I want to see from Cadillac. Progress and execution. Can he qualify better? Can he manage his tires? Can he stay clean in traffic? Can he pace into points? Can he avoid that one mistake that turns a good weekend into a frustrating one? Because we know the talent's there. He's a 9-time IndyCar winner. It doesn't happen by accident. But Formula 2 is a different animal. I've said it before. It's, the tires are different. The racing is different. The weekends are more compressed. The field is young, aggressive, and hungry. And Colton has to prove that he can adapt. So that's the Cadillac watch this weekend. For the F1 team, does a substantial upgrade move the Mach 26 closer to the midfield? For Checo and Bottas, can they execute cleanly and give the team something real to build for? For Colton, can he keep showing that this F2 year is not just a detour, but a real step towards the Cadillac F1 future? That's what we're watching for in Austria. Progress, data, execution. The baby Mach 26 gets another set of parts, the team gets another test, and the American F1 project keeps moving. And there you have it, folks. That is your Austrian Grand Prix preview. Join us next week where we will review the Austrian Grand Prix and preview the Silverstone Grand Prix because we have a back-to-back race weekend. I will see you then.
Good launch off the line for Lando Norris. Sees him chop across Charles Leclerc. But 5 lights.